So my name is Sibley. I'm a witch from South Wales. My coven is called Dragon Oak, and we are a traditional coven that operates on a very earth-based traditional path. We use a lot of plants and working with plant spirits and genus loci and spirits from around the place, particularly working with trees and with different sorts of plants. We do a lot of work for conservation and a lot of ecological work around the area. And what I would like, if I could make a change in the pagan world, is for pagans to be more knowledgeable and understanding about why we need to be more ecological and get involved more with ecological things. I run 2 conferences in Wales, the Welsh Occult conferences, and then I can speak probably in about 3 or 4 other ones as well. So we've got quite an active conference scene in the UK. It's really good, it's really enjoyable, and there are lots of wide range of speakers that we can learn from, which is excellent. My first book was a book called Unveiling the Green, and it was a book about working alchemically, psychologically and astrologically with plants. It's about how we've distanced ourselves from nature and about the way that we can reintegrate ourselves into the natural cycles of things and involve ourselves with the green spirits more. And this allows us an access to working with the earth as an organism, and that then helps us to reintegrate our practice and our general lives, because our lives are very disconnected from the natural world at the moment. We tend to house ourselves within our little boxes and we don't venture out into the wild, and that's where you find that reconnection with nature increases well-being, it increases your understanding of where your roots should be. And because of the disconnect we have, that's causing a lot of mental health problems, it's causing a lot of disconnection with the things that we're doing to the world. So for example, using the world in our industrial endeavours and not thinking about how we're affecting the other people that are non-humans in the world. So my second book is called Black Paths and Green Cathedrals, and it's purely based around the ecological stance that we have as witches, or we should have as witches. It talks about the effect of capitalism and the fact that we are falling for the illusions that capitalist society wants us to fall for, and buying into the capitalist ideology through paganism. For example, the massive wholesale buying of crystals, using the sacred plants such as frankincense to the point where we're killing and destroying the frankincense supplies. Things like working with ayahuasca. Instead of using it as a spiritual tool, we're using it as almost like a team building tool, where it should be purely used for spirituality and spiritual development. And generally looking after the country that you live in. So I talk about things like using cluties, which are pieces of material that you hang from trees which release spells. And a lot of people are misunderstanding how to do that because they're using things like nylon, which don't degrade. So not only are you causing a problem with pollution in society, but you're also not releasing your spell work because it's still contained within that nylon. So it's about generally looking at your practice and seeing how you can change from a world-based practice where you're shipping in things like white sage, where you're shipping in things like crystals from different areas of the world, to a localized practice where you're working with the stones and the shells and the waters around your local area, and being much more land-based within your community rather than looking at practices that maybe are outside our community and that are unecological for our practice if we're saying we're ecological people. What's happening at the moment is that we've moved from a model of medicine which was holistic, which involved finding out what the actual problem was that was causing the disease and then treating the symptoms whilst treating the cause, to a symptom-based medical model where we treat the symptoms but we don't actually find out what's wrong and what's going wrong with the person to help them. The problem you have with that is that if you don't treat the cause, you're never going to cure the issue, because the symptoms will just continue. And and this is controversial and I apologise, it's within a pharmaceutical company's interests to treat symptoms, because that way you have a never-ending market of drugs that you can treat the symptoms with without actually looking at what the causes are. For young people, I particularly am interested in the effect of social media on young people and the fact that they are being exposed to things that energetically are of such a negative impact on them. It's affecting their mental health. It's affecting their ability to communicate, their social abilities, to understand and empathize with other people, because they're constantly bombarded with these terrible negative images which can massively affect the mental health and well-being of a young person, because they're not fully formed yet. And yet what we're doing is, rather than treating them as a child, we are giving them all the rights and of an adult without any of the responsibilities. And that means that they can't distinguish in the end between reality and fantasy, which is incredibly worrying for them. Honestly, I think the understanding that paganism is not about reading a book, it's not about casting a circle, it's not about doing the things that people think that pagans and witches should do. It's about getting involved. It's about becoming active in your community. It's about making a difference in the real world. It's about changing people's attitudes towards the livingness of the planet, to move away from the mechanization that we have at the moment, where we're thinking that things are mechanical, bodies are mechanical, medicine is mechanical, to being an organically based ideology, so that every time you take an action, if you eat a piece of food, that you understand that that food was once a living organism, that you are transferring that energy into your body, and that you should be thankful for the life of the other thing that you're consuming, because it's given up its life to give you that energy, to do in the world, to go and be active, to do things, rather than sit aside and think that you're practicing paganism because you are celebrating the wheel of the year. Get out and clean beaches, get out and clean rivers, get out and make a difference to our young people. And that way then you're making a real difference to the world. One of the most important things about being active in particularly a pagan community is to remember that your way is not the right way. The way to practice is to bring yourself and people who practice in your tradition joy and satisfaction, and the end product will be happiness, because happiness isn't a real condition. It's a byproduct of being satisfied, of being content. But the way that you get that satisfaction and contentment might not be the same for the pagan that lives down the road, and their practice is as valid to them as your practice is to you. So tread lightly on other people's spirituality and make sure that you acknowledge that at the end of the day we live in a massive alchemical laboratory. There are millions of windows into that laboratory, which is the universe, and it doesn't matter what window you look through as long as you look through one window. So be kind to your fellow pagans and your fellow witches.